Alright, my name is Derek Moore, and I am doing the video presentation for my final, Making Thinking Visible, because I wouldn't be able to attend class Monday for the classroom discussion, although I would definitely love to, due to my work and scheduling, I wouldn't be able to. So yes, I first want to thank you, Ms. Taylor, for all the guidance throughout the semester, because I really won't be able to see you face to face before the end of the semester. But let's get to it. Yes, so this semester, JCTC as a whole, and you, Ms. Taylor, you wanted us to think critically. Within thinking critically, I honestly did not know what a critical thinker was, because I don't want to put it off on me being a first gen, college student, but I just did not know. Whenever you said that earlier in the semester, you mentioned it several times that you have to be a critical thinker throughout the semester. And I was like, how can I be a critical thinker? I honestly thought it was just rereading over my work and making sure there was no flaws. But apparently, you guys were providing us skill sets throughout the semester that we wasn't proactively aware of, such as analysis, discrimination, predicting, explanation, interpretation, and logical reasoning. So I'm going to first start with analysis, because that is the first on the list. Analysis is the abstract separation of a whole into its parts in order to understand the relation to one another. That is the obvious, our rhetorical analysis. The rhetorical analysis was the first assignment that we had this semester, and that was, within that assignment, we were supposed to watch a TED Talk. After watching the TED Talk, we were supposed to figure out how the author of the TED Talk was providing his ethos, how he was providing his logos, and how he's providing his pathos. To first understand how he's providing that information, you need to understand what those foreign terms meant, because to me, I never heard those terms before I took this course. Of course, the classroom discussion helped a lot, and within that classroom discussion, you handed out this definition sheet for rhetorical analysis. This also helped. Within watching the video, I was just jotting down notes on, the definition of each. Yes, and we just need to, understand what ethos was, which was the ethical appeal, how the author convinced the audience of his credibility. Theaster Gates, he didn't come right out and say, this is how I'm credible for what I've done. And just to give you a little bit of ethos on what he did, Theaster Gates, his TED Talk was on how to revive a neighborhood with imagination, beauty, and art. So he was first a potter. He then went from potting to tar art. Within tar art, he realized that his imagination possibilities were endless. So he then realized that his surroundings and his neighborhood was not what he wanted them to be. So he flipped one house. He then went from flipping one house to flipping a whole block, called the Dorchester Projects, and which is a really creative, really admirable. And honestly, I never knew about the Dorchester Projects until I watched the TED Talk, but I was honestly inspired after watching it. Because that's what I want to do. I want to make the change, and he was proactive about making the change. But he established his ethos by, establishing his roots as an innovator. He didn't just come right out and say, I have the authority to, recreate and flip houses because I watch a lot of HGTV. He, started from the bottom. He was just a potter. He was an artist, He then used his art to recreate and reimagine his community. His pathos, pathos is the emotional appeal, and how the author, how they persuade the audience, to appealing to their emotion. And any TED Talk you watch, the pathos really isn't going to be blatant. Like it's not gonna. They're not gonna come right out and say, or come out and cry to gain your emotional appeal. So how Theaster Gates provided his pathos was his humble spirit. They connected with him because he was so humble. Not only that, he mentioned his father several times within the TED Talk, and how his father helped, you know, with his advancement in imagination and his advancement in his career, because his dad was the first person to do tar art with him, and tar art was how he came to the conclusion that, hey, my imagination possibilities are endless. His logos was his logic, his reasoning behind this. He explained his thought process with reshaping the community. He didn't, complain about how the downfall of Chicago was going, and the failing housing market, and how the government wasn't taking care of the houses that were abandoned. He went out and did it. Like, he went and invested in a home that was abandoned. He recreated that home with his imagination. The neighbors loved it, and he continued to do it. He added, more and more on. The next skill set that we were supposed to use was, of course, discrimination. Discrimination is the ability or power to make distinctions among items that are similar. Within discrimination, my choice was our annotated bibliography. Because within the annotated bibliography, we were supposed to find 5 scholarly sources and 5 outside sources. We were supposed to annotate and summarize those sources, and mention the relevancy of them for our research paper, which was the next assignment that we were scheduled to do. So yes, this annotated bibliography was a list of sources, basically, to help us write our research paper. I'm going to skip ahead to interpretation, because I'm also going to use interpretation for my annotated bibliography. Interpretation was the ability to identify the significance of information in relation to a body of knowledge. Within this annotated bibliography and the research paper, for the research paper, there was 3 topics. My research paper was on the gender pay gap, and my 3 topics pertaining to the gender pay gap, in explaining my argument was how the gap had slowed down closing, how the salary was approached, and the female pay, career progression. So after I figured out those 3 topics, I then went to my annotated bibliography, and then on the side of the sources that I was going to use within my research paper, I wrote the topic: career progression, how salary is approached, career progression, how it's slowed down. So these sources right here, and the list and the notes I'm jotting down, was my interpretation on how I'm going to use these sources and how they're relevant to my research paper. The next topic was predicting, or the next skill set was predicting, and that's the ability to foretell based on calculation, knowledge, inference from facts or experience. I used predicting, that skill set was mostly used, was mostly used with the CRAP test. Before we could do the annotated bibliography, whenever we was in search of our sources, we had to perform the CRAP test, which is the currency, the relevance, the authority, the accuracy, and the purpose of the source that we're using. This CRAP test provided me the most accurate results in regards to my research paper. That's just that. Explanation was the ability to make something comprehensible by describing the relevant operation structure and circumstances. Within the explanation, That is my research paper. My research paper was on the gender pay gap and how it's so persistent in America today, and you know, how institutionalized prejudice is something that needs change, which is my thesis statement. um, Logical reasoning is the process of forming conclusions based on facts or evidence. My logical reasoning was my outline for my research paper. I then broke it off into different sections, and then I wrote. I was going off of my outline in regards to writing it. Like, I was checking it off as I go, making sure I cover these topics. Not only was there the topics, there was the titles of the sources I was going to cite within those topics. So, yes, logical reasoning is right here within this outline, and outlines are definitely important in regards to writing papers. You also want us to answer these questions. How did we use critical thinking skills for this class? I just answered that by the flashcards. Of course, which assignments were required for which skills and which skills were easy. Alright, so we already established which assignments were for which skills, but which skills were easy? I'd say pretty much all of the skills are easy to apply. There's no one that's easier. But if you want to put a label on one, I'd say the logical reasoning. Just creating an outline. That was the easiest skill set. Like, because you take all the information you already have, you put it in a list format, and this list format makes your research paper so much easier to write. Like, people need to make outlines or print off the outlines that you guys provide us. It's not hard to just jot down some information real quick and just apply that information when you're typing it. The hard was explanation. And I only say that because my choice was the gender pay gap, and a lot of the sources I was finding for the gender pay gap was saying that it's closed and it's no longer existent, but it actually is. And I was trying to get to the root of it, and all the sources was saying that it's 2018, get with the program. But that's not true. Like, it's hidden so well. Like, the prejudice is hidden so well, and it's not okay. Like, it's really not. So yes, I love the research paper, but it was complicated to put together in regards to my topic, and I'd say I would still need work with it, just in regards to applying counter arguments and and concluding it all together and placing it as a big whole. But yes, so yeah, this is my final. I'm so sorry that it is not perfect, but yes, I'd say the classroom discussion would have been much easier than the video. But thank you, Ms. Taylor, for all your opportunities that you provide us, and I hope you have a really fun summer, and I hope to see you next semester, mostly probably in the Learning Commons Center. I'll definitely need your help. You're definitely the